Good evening, Rian Kutsia-Fort is Proactive Defense Solutions. I'm talking to Jonathan Wright from the Firearms Policy Campaign. Episode 4, Muskets to Magazines, the Langalibalele Affair. Tongue twister. I've been trying that one this whole day, hoping I get it right. Jonathan, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, Rian. Good to see you again. And yeah, episode, like you said, fourth video. I think there's
Fourth
one
video.
more after this, and then we're done with the colonial era. No, there's two more, at least
Two
in that
more, yes.
list I gave.
Yes.
Yeah, we're getting there.
But this one is an interesting one. So I think let's start with a bit about the origins and the background of this whole thing. Tell us what events led to this conflict between Chief Langalibalele and the colonial
Yeah,
authorities.
there you go.
I got it.
You nearly got that perfectly.
Yeah, I got it.
Langalibalele. Yeah, don't worry. It took me ages to get around it.
So
Yeah,
very
but yeah,
specifically, can we refer to the gun law policies and the role that they played, in this broader colonial power dynamics that were playing off back then?
yeah. So as you say, it is a very interesting story, and I think it is. Personally, of the ones we've done so far, Cape Frontier Wars, Confederation Policy, of course, the actual laws, and now Langalibalele, I think this is by far the most interesting one we've done so far. And when we do the Basuto War of the Gun, then I think it'll be a bit of a toss-up because both are very, very interesting, very powerful stories out of our past. And yeah, you asked what was the lead up to this and how did it happen? Well, before I start that, I should actually just say as well, I did write an article about this. It's on the FPC blog. If you want to know more, you can go there. And we'll almost certainly be talking about this a lot more going forward because this is
Yes.
all about the narrative building, making that uh, that thing that gets people excited about
Yes.
firearms and about, well, themselves for that matter. Anyway, so what was going on in Natal at the time? Well, the amaHlubi people, they are there. They're refugees really of the Zulu Wars, and they've become quite powerful economically. I mean, relatively speaking, and they're very good farmers. They are being used as colonial policemen for the frontier to keep the Bushmen in the mountains and away from the colonist farms. And they like guns. They really do. So not all of them worked. They didn't want to sell their labor. They did not want to be wage laborers, the amaHlubi people. These are the people of Langalibalele, and he is their chief. They did not want to be wage laborers, generally speaking. They preferred to own their land outright or rent land and farm it themselves. So they were very commercially, they had a lot of commercial prowess, were quite good businessmen in that sense. Very well integrated into the colonial economy. That said, some of them did work as migrant labor on the diamond mines in the Cape near Griqualand West. And as mentioned in the previous videos, the Cape had very liberal gun control laws. Okay, strictly speaking, Griqualand West is not part of the Cape. It's a territory by itself with its own governor, Lieutenant Governor Richard Southey. But they also have very relaxed gun control laws, almost even more relaxed than what the Cape had. So
Okay.
these mine laborers, they'd earn their money and they would buy things, pots, pans, plows, but also firearms. And in the case of the amaHlubi, they'd bring them back with them to Natal. And if any of your audience has watched the previous videos where we talk about Natal law is very, very anti-firearm, specifically anti-firearms in black hands. They do not like that idea. They have a hyper control system. They want to regulate and register every gun they can find wherever it may be found, practically turning up every rock to find one. And in the case of the amaHlubi, they are bringing these firearms back, and they are not always registering them like they're supposed to in terms of Natal law. So that is the real origin story of what is all going on here. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. That's the lead up to the situation, and how it got to the point where it turned into armed conflict eventually. So, if you look at things from the chief's perspective, why was registering their firearms or surrendering the firearms or even declaring ownership such a problematic demand for him and for his people?
So I don't actually know whether the issue of registration itself was an issue for him. Um, the, there is never really a dispute about that. It's just that he just didn't do it. Now, why didn't he do it? It's not really clear why he didn't do it. We can infer, we can guess. But the fact was he did not register them. And this caught the attention of the Natal colonial authorities. And it's a very interesting story how that happened. Uh, I now have to try and think if I am gonna tell it, I'm not even sure if I can pronounce the auxiliary policeman's name correctly.
I remember the
Imtitielzelwa or
story.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they sent an auxiliary policeman, a black policeman,
Yeah.
to come and talk to them about their firearms.
Yeah. So the white colonial farmers were starting to get a little restless and about the fact that the amaHlubi had firearms, which is strange because they were de facto auxiliary policemen themselves. They were settled at the foot of the Drakensberg Mountains to protect the white colonist farmers from the roving bandits that lived in the mountains. And they could be anyone really. They could be outlaws, white or black. It didn't really matter. They were troublemakers. These people from the mountains, the Bushmen. Um, Other sources, depending on the context, they can also refer to the Khoi or San, but I think in this context, they're just bandits. Anyway, so
Yeah.
the amaHlubi are here. They're very effective. As mentioned, they're very good at farming. They're not selling their labor to the white farmers. So they're driving up labor costs and they make farmers in the area less competitive because at this point in history, there are not that many people really in South Africa,
Yeah.
white or black for that matter. And well, in that particular area, it's the region around Escort. Clearly, there weren't a lot of other blacks either that they could use as labor. So they weren't getting, not only were they not getting labor from the amaHlubi, they were competing with them because they wanted to farm their own land, and that's what they did most of the time. And so you start to get this this desire to get rid of them, to make them into wage labor, make their labor available. But the land that they also have is also very good land. And well, they want that too. So now they need to figure out how to get rid of them and starts with anxieties around firearms. There's also anxiety around crime committed by blacks in Natal, although it's exaggerated to the point that there were concerns about lots of rapes happening. There were none at least according to the historical sources. So it was all just scaremongering. And in response, the Natal government told all the magistrates, enforce the firearm laws we have and enforce them very strictly, like properly now. No more lollygagging. And so the Vienna magistrate ends up sending Zelwa, if I've got his name correctly, to go and inquire with the amaHlubi, which he does. And on his way there, he encounters a young amaHlubi boy cleaning or playing with a firearm. And he tries to take it so that he can go register it. But the boy says, no, you can't do that. It does not belong to you. He says, well, then give it to me. If it belongs to you, he's like, no, it doesn't belong to me either. It belongs to the chief, Langalibalele. I cannot consent to it. You have to go ask him. And if he says, yes, you can register it, then you can register it. But if he doesn't, well, I can't give it to you. It's not mine to give you, which shows an interesting level of appreciation for property rights by
True.
this native tribe in Natal. wish we had a stronger sense of property rights throughout the country as a whole today, but the amaHlubi were way ahead of us on that point. And so he tried to take the gun by force. There was a fight. Didn't really go anywhere. The father came along and said, "What on earth is going on here?" Tried to explain, "I have to take this thing to go get register it." Father said the same thing that the boy did. "Nope, you cannot do that. Does not belong to us. Belongs to the chief. You must go ask him." And the boy starts, interestingly, he starts loading the firearm and taunting this colonial policeman, who gets very nervous and asks the father to take the gun away from the boy before he shoots them, or him. The father just says, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that. He'll shoot me too. Just leave him." And the boy even says to him, to this colonial policeman, "Yeah, come and if you want this gun, come and take it from me, and I'll put you to rights." So, like, there's South Africa's very own "come and take it" attitude, not this milk toast.
Yeah.
Like, people today say, "Okay, the government can come and take my firearms. I won't let them." Oh, they will. They will roll over and do whatever the government tells them to do if the law passes. Yeah, here's a very, very inspiring story that everybody should know. This is a really cool story. Anyway, so finally he does go to Langalibalele and says, "Look, this has all happened. I need your permission to register the gun." And Langalibalele says, "No, go away, Futsek. You've upset my people. They're upset now. They're angry. And you want me to go calm them down and take away their guns and give them to you to go and read." Like, no, go away. Should have done this correctly the first time. And that's where this whole thing starts to really take off. Yeah, I don't want to ramble too much, but I started telling the story. I have forgotten exactly. Oh, yes, you asked the meaning, the significance of firearms.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
So through this whole story, I think you can see now that firearms were they were property, but they were a very special type of property. And this comes back to the Confederation video we did earlier, a few weeks ago, and even the Frontier Wars, and what firearms meant to the native tribes and their individuals in South Africa in the colonial era. The definition of being a modern man, self-reliant, independent, safe, looking after yourself, your tribe, your community, all these things. And well, the amaHlubi, not only that, they've also thoroughly westernized. In their minds, they are good, upstanding, loyal citizens of Natal. They are entitled to their firearms. They've done nothing to deserve being disarmed like this. And previous registered firearms were returned to them because you had to take them to the magistrate and then get them back. And in the past, when they had done this, they had sometimes gotten damaged or sabotaged firearms, which suggests suspicion towards them.
Clearly, there wasn't foul play at work.
Yeah, I mean, it's really clear by this point the government is very suspicious of, Natal government especially, very suspicious of armed blacks. They do not like this idea very much. So they like their firearms. It means a lot to them. And yes, it nominally belongs to Langalibalele because it was very difficult for regular common black folk to get permits. But the chiefs, they could, because the chiefs were a special class of black person in Natal. They had special authority and privileges. And one of those privileges was they could have more gunpowder than, say, a regular black. But they still had less gunpowder on their permit than, say, a white colonist. But yeah, so the amaHlubi, they like their guns, they have them, they own them on behalf of, well, actually, Langalibalele kind of owns it on their behalf because they can't have them.
Yeah.
So it means a lot to them. And Langalibalele does not want to register these guns because he knows what's going to happen to them. They will be sabotaged, if not just outright broken when he gets them back. And he gets summoned by he's showing defiance now. And this is like a big no-no. You can't do this to the government. The government must respond. And, well, they do. They summon him to appear before Lieutenant Governor Pine. Langalibalele does not go. He refuses. Instead, he decides, let's leave. So he organizes with the people, and they just leave the colony. They flee to Basotho land. And like, what is their crime so far? Well, they didn't register some guns, but they're leaving now. But this would all blow up into and be framed as a rebellion, and it's like a native uprising. If so, it's one of the worst ever, because they didn't run to Durban and overthrow the government. They ran away to Basotho land.
Interesting. How to turn a political conflict into, or a political dispute rather, into an armed conflict 101.
Yeah, and as to why the government did this, well, they wanted to stamp their authority on the matter. You can't defy us. But within all of this, it was very arbitrary. The government was not the Natal government was not applying the same zeal to other tribes like the Pondo and the Zulu. They were just focusing. This magistrate, the Vienna magistrate, was just decided, and the government decided to back him up. We're just going to make an example out of the amaHlubi. And so it was very unfair in that sense as well.
Because they dared to defy them and say, no, we're not going to give you our firearms.
It might even be
You know
because
what?
firearms had more meaning and significance to the amaHlubi than to these other groups as well. The
Yeah.
impression one gets is that, yeah, the Zulu and the Pondo and all these, they like their firearms, but no, like the impression you get is the amaHlubi really like their firearms.
It certainly sounds like it, yes. So this thing escalated into the point where they now finally caught up with him, and they took Chief Langalibalele prisoner.
Yeah,
And
they
then
bribed he got to Basotho land. He was one of the successful ones, but one of the Basotho chiefs had already been bribed ahead of time. So as soon as he got there and asked for sanctuary, they just handed him over, and that's where the whole trial begins.
so let's talk about this trial, so-called, and the legal process that accompanied it. How did it reflect colonial injustice, and what were the consequences specifically? Well, for everybody involved, the chief, for his people, tribal autonomy, leadership, land rights, etc. Leading from this bit of a, from everything I could pick up, a farce of a trial.
Yeah, this trial, and also of the rebellion, but mostly the trial, it shook the known English world all the way. Like, every people in London knew what was going on here.
Mm.
And so it wasn't, as I already said, the laws were being very arbitrarily applied to the amaHlubi. So there's your first sense of injustice. Now he's on trial for instigating rebellion, and airplanes living underneath a flight path. Anyway, so his trial starts, and like, there's no plan on what to do with him or how to try him. They don't know whether they're going to use English law or customary law, so they use both, which doesn't work because they kind of undermine each other. You can use one or the other, but you can't apply them both at the same time. So they did that, or they tried to at least. Langalibalele wasn't even sure what he was being charged with. It wasn't clear. Was it rebellion? Was it just not doing some admin work, getting your licenses and permits in order? Was it something else? They weren't clear to him. At least that's what he said. The government, this is where it gets worse. The government tampered with the court transcripts, specifically Sir Theophilus Shepstone, who was the great chief. He was the initial. He was an yeah. He used to be, as far as I remember, a lieutenant governor for Natal. So he's like the premier, the president, whatever. At least that's what he was, and or he's still going to be. I'm not actually sure what the timeline is on that front. I don't know his career path that well. I just know that he was in certain positions.
Yes.
And so he spoke fluent isiZulu. He understood a lot of black customary traditions very well, and he was really well respected for that reason. Now here he is. He's also a judge of appeal. He's not a judge for a court of first instance. He's only allowed to hear appeals. Yet in Langalibalele's trial, he is sitting as the judge. So that's already irregular. That he shouldn't be there. He's not a legitimate appointee in that sense. His brother was also the prosecutor, and the brother had previously been sent as a diplomatic messenger to a chief on an issue or dispute, and then pulled a revolver and arrested the chief. So
Oh, there
can't
goes the
do
trust.
that. Yeah, it's
Yes.
like you send your ambassador to arrest Donald Trump, like sort of
Yes.
thing. Like that's no, don't do that. So from the start, Langalibalele did not trust this whole thing. He did not trust the prosecutor because that was clear. Shepston wasn't even supposed to be the judge. I don't know whether Langalibalele was literate or not, but he was definitely a very intelligent cookie. Um, he was able to figure out what was going on here. It wasn't about firearms. It was about making an example of him and destroying the amaHlubi. And there wasn't really much he could do about that because the dice had already
Oh,
been cast, and it was a sham. Everything was rigged from start to finish. The witnesses lied for the state. Under cross-examination, Shepston also lied to protect his brother. So it was just a farce from start to finish. Langalibalele did have an ally in Bishop Kalenzo, who was very concerned the effect of this sham trial could have on missionary work. And so he worked tirelessly to publicize and let people know. He was rustling up support in London and all throughout South Africa. Anywhere he could, he was screaming from the rooftops about what was going on here. In the end, Langalibalele was convicted because, of course, he was. That was always decided.
Yep.
Then the question became, okay, now what do we do with him? Like, do we execute him? Do we just deprive him of all property and everything and destroy them that way? They decided on a third option. They banished him to Robben Island, which was not even legally possible until the Cape changed their laws so that they could actually do it legally. So
So the Cape went and played along at that point.
I don't know the details of how they got roped into it in this sense,
Yeah.
but the point at the end of the day, they had to um, agree to it to some extent. Uh, Obviously, if you really want to understand it, you need to understand the role of Natal and the Cape in respect of each other, because they're kind of independent countries or colonies. But at this point in time, Natal is answering to London via the Cape. At least they're not going directly. They don't. That's not until 1991. I don't know colonial government structures all that well, so I can't elaborate too much on that. All I can say is that Natal couldn't just send people to Robben Island. That was for the Cape to decide. So they had to have some kind of cooperation there. And this was seen as a really brutal punishment, even worse than execution, because it was a life of solitary confinement until death. Which, when you think about it, yeah, that is worse than death. Especially, well, it's Robben
Yeah.
Island. There's nothing there. For anyone that visited it, it's just birds with guano and it's a couple of seals. Like that's it. So he was sent there for a while, and Colenso was, as usual, screaming from the rooftops in London and making the British public very upset about it. Even the Queen got involved. And that was his point, Colenso's point the whole time. He wanted the Queen to intervene. Now, she couldn't do much. She was a figurehead. She doesn't have direct authority. She signs the bills after Parliament passes them, but she can't tell Parliament what to do, sort of thing. And she appealed for clemency to be shown to him because she thought this was very unfair. And, well, her words do carry weight, even if she doesn't have any authority. And changes were made, and he was moved to the mainland. And he was put on a farm outside on the Cape Flats, outside Cape Town. And that area would come to be known as Langa today. Langa Township. It's
Today,
named
okay.
after Langalibalele. So there's a lot more of our past with us than we often think. We take a lot of things for granted.
Yes.
I never thought much of Langa until I was doing my research, and I just thought, wait a second. Langalibalele, Cape Flats. Is there a relationship here? Fine. Oh, there is. So yeah, if there's not a
Really
statue of
interesting.
Langalibalele in Langa Square, then I will be very upset.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, he was moved there, and it called this whole trial, like I said, it shook the known English world at the time. Throughout Southern Africa, ZAR, Orange Free State, Cape, Natal, everyone was freaking out about black people with guns at this point, and they were getting really concerned. And Confederation is about to be attempted as well. Our previous video, I think, was Confederation. So
That's right.
if the viewer is interested in this, they go watch that. That's another doozy of a thing. But this is the prelude up to that. What almost makes me want to say we should have done Langalibalele first, but no, I think Confederation first was still a good idea. But yeah, so that's how it kind of ended, really, with him sitting on, well, in present day Langa. A world ablaze, politically speaking. Lieutenant Governor Pine got fired over this whole issue. He was a scapegoat. Shepstone was the real villain in the story, I think. But the Secretary for the Colonies, Lord Carnarvon, had already decided that no, Shepstone is useful for my coming plans of Confederation, and Pine is useless. So Pine got all the blame, and Shepstone got a promotion.
Okay, go figure. That too sounds familiar.
Yeah, where else does
Doesn't
this
it
happen?
just? What
The ANC
happened
didn't do it
to
first, folks. The colonial powers are
what happened to Langalibalele's tribe
they were
after he got
dispersed.
yes?
So I, in doing some reading earlier today, actually, I saw that the amaHlubi made an application, or they applied to a commission of inquiry about tribal leadership. They applied to be recognized as a nation again, and with a king, and who would be Langalibalele II, actually, interestingly enough. And the commission, I think a second commission later said, no, you can't be, because we find that you were dispersed as a people in the colonial era already. You can't just become a nation again. You're too dispersed. There's too much time between when you were initially dispersed and what you're claiming now. So yeah, they were dispersed. The tribe was basically shattered. And not only them, also the Ngwe tribe, they were destroyed because they were complicit in this rebellion. They were hiding. The
Yes.
amaHlubi did not take their cattle with them when they fled to Basutoland. They hid it with the Ngwe tribe. When the Natal government discovered that, they destroyed them as well, because they were aiding in a rebellion. So
two tribes.
Yeah,
Basically
unfortunately,
destroyed.
the Ngwe were kind of
Yes.
collateral damage in a sense. But so I lost my train of thought for a second there, so I'm trying to find it again.
Yeah,
You asked if they were destroyed, like what happened to the people. Yeah, they were dispersed.
yeah,
The tribe was
they were
factually destroyed.
yes.
They ended up becoming the wage labor that some of the white collar farmers wanted so much, that their land would have probably been taken away from them. Not that I didn't see any evidence or allegation to that effect, but that was one of the motivating factors for this whole thing in the beginning. So I'd be surprised if that
Yeah.
didn't end up happening.
Especially
if the people are dispersed. If they're dispersed, then they can't have a land reservation, which is what they had before. So no people, no land reservation. So I would guess that, and they can't have guns either, obviously.
Yeah, and then you're at the mercy of the government, which is obviously what the intention was.
Yeah, though and to just expropriate from them their land and labor, which they got.
Exactly.
or the government got at least.
Yeah.
And Langalibalele lived on this, like it wasn't a nice place to live. Like it was an improvement over Robben Island. He could at least see people. He became a bit of a tourist attraction. But I mean, it's the Cape Flats. Nothing grows there. It's just sand. Again, still better than what Robben Island was. And
Exactly.
after living there for, I don't know how long he was there for, but as he started to get much older and closer to death, he just wanted one thing, and that was to go back and, like his words were, I just want to see Natal one more time before I die. And so the government actually had pity on him, and they let him go back. And he died in Natal 3 years later, 2 or 3 years later. Obviously not the same one that he left, but he got his dying wish. So there's a happy still ending in that sense, but it's a bit of a bittersweet end
It's a
to the
bittersweet.
story.
Yeah, I agree with that. So there are obviously lessons to be learned from this. So what do we learn from this tragedy? How does it impact today, what we're experiencing today, looking at things like trust and fairness and justice? How relevant are the lessons in the current day and age in South
one is
Africa?
don't trust the government.
This is true.
Yeah, but that's a bit like stating the obvious here. No, but for
Yes.
more nuanced and deeper and more meaningful lessons, the one is that whatever one may think of Black culture, especially in the colonial era, as this ignorant understanding of property rights that didn't appreciate or understand what Western civilization was, and people do have those thoughts, prejudices even. But here's an example of a group of people that had thoroughly westernized in a very short time, like 20, 30 years, and they were already moving on up in the colonial order. They were landowners. Well, maybe not owners per se with title, but they had land reservations. The government kind of gave it to them. But for all intents and purposes, they operated the land, and they were so good at it that they caused problems, economic competition for established white colonist farmers. They were commercially and economically very powerful in that sense. They weren't just laborers. They weren't like even think of the Mfengu and the Cape. They were colonial policemen, really, buffer people between the Causa and the Cape. They weren't really meant to be much more than that, but they were labor largely. They weren't as much as they were productive members in the economy. They're not like the amaHlubi here. These people are good at this. They are taking advantage of it. And also the meaning of firearms, which again, we've already spoken about this, but here it's very clear. They like their guns. It is their playthings. It means a lot to them. It means that the government, to have them, it's like a symbol of the government trusts us, which of course they didn't. At least the government didn't trust them. And they owned their own labor as well. They didn't just rent it out. They were very independent people. I think Kalenzo's words during the trial in defense of the amaHlubi were something to the effect that the Hlubi people are of an independent spirit, and they like their guns, and they're entitled to both. What is their crime? Like I've butchered it a bit, but that was the sense. Like, look, these are very proud people. They're very independent. They like their guns. Let them have both. They have a God-given right to all of it. And it comes down to don't trust the government on these sorts of things. They don't like it when you are independent and when you can look after yourself, and when you have a free spirit like the amaHlubi did. We look at just the Firearms Control Act. It's the Control Act. There's nothing free about it.
It's all in the name.
Yeah. When they tell you who they are the first time, believe them.
Yes, yes. Well, that's the interesting part for me about this. I mean, history in itself, but in this that we're talking about the theme for your doctorate, which is the history of firearms and firearms legislation in South Africa. It's always interesting to start getting an idea of how things that happened way back then are either happening today or it has relevance to what is happening today. And I think all concerned parties can learn from this. As in, maybe just leave people's firearms alone and move on.
Now, obviously, what I've said here is a very, very abridged. Like this is the TLDR version. I mean, even the article that I wrote in preparation for this is quite brief by comparison. I would ideally like to have just copy pasted the entire chapter from my doctorate in this respect, but yeah, that might be a bit much. And that's where you really get to see and understand the meaning as I drill down into these things. And it's not like I'm the only one to have realized this stuff. There were colonists back then who saw these, like Bishop Colenso. He saw all of the significance and the meaning. You don't have to live in the 21st century to appreciate this stuff. They appreciated it back then already. And it's a story with deep implications and significance, which we could be here for ages to really flesh it out. Suffice it to say, my doctorate, I'm sure I will make it publicly available in one form or another for people to read when it's done. And it's the sort of understanding that we need if we are to challenge and really be critical about what the laws we have today. The other thing I wanted to say about this is this issue of a right to own firearms. It keeps on popping up through. This is what really surprised me in the course of my doctoral research. This question keeps on coming up all the time. There's never an answer to it, but people are always thinking about it. They thought about it in the Cape. They thought about it in Natal. And maybe not. They kind of did in the Orange Free State, not really in the ZAR. Even in the post-war territories now, the defeated Boer republics, they were still talking about this. Even during the Union Union of South Africa, they were talking about this in Parliament. During the apartheid era, they were talking about this in Parliament. During the democratic era, they were talking about this in Parliament. There's no one ever answers it. But it's very important to note that there are people in our government in the history, over the whole history of South Africa, that have thought about this. And even our courts they don't like this question at all. And that's a topic all by itself when we get to it, towards the end of this whole video series, I guess. This is a question that needs to be answered. And there is a lot going in our favor when it comes to answering it. But we won't talk about that now.
Jonathan, I'm going to end it there then. Episode 4 for the viewers. That means there are 3 previous episodes in the series. The series is called Muskets to Magazines. Go check it out. It's very interesting stuff. I'm sure you'll find a lot of stuff in there that will get you interested in the history of firearms and also start forming a better picture of where we are today and our path that we've walked with firearms and legislation over hundreds of years. So if you like the video, you know what to do. Actually click the like button. Go and subscribe to the channel so that we can have a bigger footprint on the internet. Help us out with that. And smash that bell icon so that you can get notifications of all our new videos. I will be putting the Firearms Policy Campaign's Facebook details on the screen for the duration of this video. So unless Jonathan wants me to refer people to the blog instead, so they can go read the articles. But there will be contact details where you can get hold of them. And if you're interested in any of the loan operator training courses, as always, there is a link in the description below. Check it out, and we hope to see you on a firing range one of these days. Jonathan, thank you so much. Enjoy your evening.
You as well, Rian. Thank you again.
Thanks.